A little while ago, I did a couple videos on two ancient Egyptian obelisks that are now in New York City and London. So why don't we look at all the other obelisks that are outside of Egypt, and then we can look at the ones that are still in Egypt today. First, we are going to go over the several obelisks that are in Italy, though only a couple of them are actually Egyptian. I'm still going to talk about the non-Egyptian ones too. But let's look at the Laterna Obelisk. So this obelisk is quite famous because it is the largest standing Egyptian obelisk in the world. It was originally created by Pharaoh Thutmose III, though it wasn't finished until after he died, when his grandson Thutmose IV finished the project. He was able to erect this obelisk east of the Great Temple of Amun in Karnak. It then stood 105 feet or 32 meters tall. The inscriptions on four sides include the Horus name, coronation name, and birth name of Thutmose III in that center column. And then on either side of that center column, they include the name of Thutmose IV, as well as a hieroglyph for the number 35, which probably indicates the 35 years that it was left derelict between the two pharaohs. So right after the defeat of Cleopatra, Emperor Augustus attempted to take this obelisk back to Rome, but it proved too heavy for him to take it. So he left this one and he took two other smaller obelisks with him, and we'll talk about those in another video. So in the early 4th century, the Roman Emperor Constantius II took this obelisk as well as the obelisk of Theodosius from Thebes to Alexandria. He wanted to bring back both of these obelisks to his new capital, Constantinople, but the Laterna Obelisk didn't make it. It's too big. So it actually sat in Alexandria, and then a few decades later, the emperor shipped the obelisk to Rome, where then it was erected near another Egyptian obelisk that we will also talk about, called the Flaminio Obelisk. I'm going to do a whole separate video on the Flaminio Obelisk, but the weird thing is that by the time the Laterna Obelisk was placed here in the Circus Maximus in Rome, the Flaminio Obelisk had been here for 360 years, which is just a whole different story. So both of the obelisks stood here until the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century, and they were abandoned and either were broken down or taken down, but eventually they were buried by mud and a small stream that went through the Circus Maximus. So the two obelisks sat here buried until the 14th to 15th century, where they were excavated by Pope Sixtus V. And it's just weird to think that somebody, if they didn't know that there was an obelisk there, they just suddenly started excavating and found an Egyptian obelisk, which is just completely random to think about. The Laterna obelisk was found in 3 pieces and was dug up in 1587. It was then restored by architect Domincio Fontana, but it was about 13 feet or 4 meters shorter than it was originally. They weren't able to restore it to its full height. It was then erected near the Laterna Palace on the 9th of August, 1588, which is where it gets its name from. The Laterna Palace was the main papal residence that was used for about 1,000 years. This is also next to the Basilica di San Giovanni, which is one of the 4 major basilicas in Rome, and technically the oldest one. It also became the last ancient Egyptian obelisk to be erected in Rome. They did add a cross to the very top and decorated the pedestal with inscriptions explaining Egyptian history and its travels to Alexandria and Rome, though it's probably highly inaccurate, but we'll give it to them. Considering that it mentions incorrectly that this obelisk marks the location of Emperor Constantine the Great's baptism, even though he was baptized at his death in Nicomedia. So that's totally random. There are more obelisks to come. Enjoy!